Now and forever, we bring IT to life.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for standing by. Good day and welcome to the BMC Connect with Remedy monthly webinar series. Today's webinar is being recorded, and at this time I would like to turn the call over to your host, Mr. Greg Keoy. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Paula, and welcome everyone to our monthly Connect with Remedy webinar series. This month we have a great topic, Remedy Single Sign-On, and we have Rahul Vedak, Senior Product Manager, and Alvin Hom, a R&D Solutions Architect that will take us through this content. Right now I'll turn it over to Rahul.
Hey, thank you, Greg. Single sign-on, or SSO, is often single point of entry for users accessing Remedy or any other application. So as a Remedy expert, how do you ensure that you can set up SSO quickly and have SSO available so as users can access hosts of applications without getting prompted for password multiple times? My name is Rahul Vedak and I'm Senior Product Manager here at BMC Software. I'm working with BMC for last 5 years, and in my recent stint I'm working as a Remedy Product Manager and driving this new product, Remedy SSO, along with some of the other Remedy product components like smart reporting, analytics. Also joining here with us is Alvin. Alvin is R&D Solution Architect and he's based out of BMC's San Jose, California office. Here is what we plan to cover in next 90 minutes. I'll start with quick introduction to new Remedy SSO. Then we'll have Alvin talk through the product and the deployment architecture. Also, Alvin will run a 10-minute recorded demo to show how easy it is to set up a Remedy SSO. And as you would guess, this demo is more for administrator activities since SSO is transparent to end users. Post demo, I'll talk about a few commonly asked questions about the new SSO solution, and then finally we'll open this forum for Q&A. Also to note, we have few members of product R&D team on the WebEx with us. So if you have any question while we are presenting, you can type them in the Q&A panel of the WebEx, and someone from the team will start answering them right away. Before I introduce Remedy SSO, I'm going to take a minute or two to talk about SSO in general. Why SSO matters, or why would you care about SSO? So let's talk what is going to be the user experience if there is no SSO or single sign-on. When there is no single sign-on, what it means is users will have multiple usernames and passwords, one for each application, and then users have this hassle to remember password for different applications, also change it as per the password policy set up in each application. Also for administrators, there is additional task. They need to have they have to set up each application, user management within that application, they have to add users, they have to remove users, they have to reset passwords individually for each application. And that's where SSO as a generic technology, single sign-on, helps. If I put it very simply, when SSO is configured, different application use, or let's say they refer to the common user repository, and as a result, once the user authenticates himself once, user can seamlessly access other applications without need to log in. So let's turn to today's topic, Remedy SSO. Remedy SSO is built for the same purpose of solving the problem of user requiring a remedy-specific password. Once Remedy SSO is configured or integrated with the existing corporate user management system, users will be now able to access different BMC applications without need to log in, and that's what the core value of Remedy SSO is. In the later part of the application, we'll talk about which BMC applications are currently integrated with Remedy SSO. Now, truly, SSO and Remedy is not a new topic for many of you, right? We have offered, some different kind of SSO solutions for Remedy. There are partners who are providing, a solution which gives you the single sign-on experience. So what's the difference with Remedy SSO really? Options that we offered, BMC offered in the past, like Atrium SSO, offered a gamut of authentications out of the box. They were available, different authentications. But implementation of this required advanced knowledge of authentication world, or at times it required coordination between different groups like security group, network group. All of them need to work together to implement SSO solution. And hence customers found it hard to realize value from these SSO implementations or SSO options which were available in the past. And that's the exact problem that we have tried to address with Remedy SSO. While end results are same whether you use new Remedy SSO or older method of SSO, the biggest difference is new Remedy SSO is designed for simplicity. In the demo letter, you would see that it's easy to deploy, install, configure, and maintain. Also, we have given away with some of the complex third-party technologies that we used in the previous product, like the OpenSSO or Apache Active Message Queuing messaging, and that is also resulting into a Remedy SSO solution, which is a lightweight application. At this point, I'm going to pass the baton to Alvin, and he will talk through all the technical details of the product.
Okay, so I will go through the current Remedy single sign-on architecture. As Rahul kind of alluded to earlier, he kind of redesigned the SSO to be a lightweight architecture. What does that mean, right? So a lightweight means it's basically just the SSO server is just a lightweight web app, right, that handles the different authentication mechanisms, and that can be deployed on existing web containers like Tomcat, etc. So it hosts, there are two parts for SSO application. There's the SSO server, which handles all the handshaking and redirection to the actual authentication mechanism. And then there's a agent that's deployed on each of the applications that handles detecting the users not log in and redirect them for login. So the SSO service itself, it's a web app that is designed to be lightweight and handle federated authentication. So we designed it so that it's very easy to deploy. We have various deployment options. It's very easy to configure, and it's very easy to scale and set it up for like a production environment where you need to set up failover and HA. So it's very easy to install, configure, and operate. Right? Those are the main goals for the Remedy single sign-on design. So the federated authentication, so that's what it means typically is the authentication is redirected to the web app or the SSO web service, right? And the SSO web service would pick the authentication mechanism that the user configured and then redirect them to that authentication source to do the actual authentication. So if you take SAML as an example, and that's a very popular protocol for doing federated authentication. Right? So for a SAML-based authentication, our SSO service will act as a SAML service provider that negotiates a session with an external SAML identity provider. So basically, when the user requests to log in, it will act as a service provider and redirect the user login window to the SAML identity provider, and then do all the handshaking to make sure the user is authenticated. Right? And when the user is authenticated, the web service, the SSO server will generate authentication token that's stored in its database, so it can remember that you already logged in. And if you try to access it from another application, right, it'll know that you already logged in and won't prompt you again. So the product components, as I kind of discussed, is there's a J2EE web-based agent that's installed on the applications themselves, right? So if you imagine Remedy applications, like Remedy, the mid-tier, and Smart IT, My IT, those are applications that RSSO integrates with. For each of those applications, we'll install a J2EE web-based agent. And its job is mainly there to detect the user is trying to access a protected resource and see if the user is authenticated. If the user is not authenticated, then it will redirect the user to SSO service to do the authentication. So the web agent sits there, gets call on every request, looks at the request, looks whether the user is logged in, and then determines whether authentication needs to occur. On the Remedy mid-tier itself, we have SSO Authenticator, right, that implements the mid-tier authenticator interface. And that's mainly there to handshaking with SSO to extract the user information. Right? So once you've authenticated, the mid-tier authenticator will extract the user information and then present that to the application. And then the application can use the user to, map like the permissions and the roles that are defined for that user. For the AR system, we have the area plugin that's installed on the AR server, and that's also similar to mid-tier. Right? It's sitting on the AR server itself to extract user information and make sure that the user is authenticated. And in the case when it gets called, it will be presented with a SSO token, and the area plugin will verify that the token is valid by making a call to the SSO server. And then you have the SSO Web Service itself. So its main job there is to act as like the gateway for all the authentication requests. Right? So whenever a user, the agent detects the user is not authenticated, they'll redirect the request to the SSO Web App. And then the SSO Web App would do all the handshaking. So you can see from this product architecture diagram of the flows within the system. As I mentioned, there are agents that are installed on each of those applications. And it looks at every, web browser request to the server, right? And it detects whether the user is logged in. If the user's log in, right, and the token's valid, then, you'll just continue with the application. It won't prompt you for authentication. If the user is not authenticated, right, then they'll redirect the request to the SSO Web App. The SSO Web App has a plugin architecture that integrates with various authentication providers, such as AR and SAML, right? So you can think of this as a plugin architecture, and we can add, additional authentication mechanisms over time. And based on the configuration, it'll determine which authentication provider to use. So at configuration time, the SSO admin sets up, like, I will talk to a SAML server, for example. Right? In that case, the SAML plugin will be called, and then SAML will actually talk to the external SAML identity provider, such as ADFS, Ping, or SignMinder, right, to negotiate a SAML session. And that's when the user is redirected to the login page on those IDPs. So after the user has logged in on the external SAML IDP, it will pass a token back to the SSO Web Service that's acting as a service provider. But it will create a token in the session storage in the database that records, I've created a new session for this user with this token, and there's also, a session expiration time, how long this session should exist. And that's stored in the database. So if I log in once through, it will have a session and it's stored. And if you try to access the application again, it'll obviously detect that you already logged in. Right? But from the single sign-on perspective, you go to another application, say Smart IT, right? When it when you initially go into that page, right, you don't have a session or the user established yet within that application. But what it does have is the session tokens that are stored as the cookie in the browser. Right? So the agent basically sits there, looks at, extracts the token from the cookie, and then makes a call to the SSO Web App, say, is this a valid token? Right? The token could be valid, like they just faked it, or invalid, the user faked it, or the session has timeout. Right? But the session, if the token is valid, right, it will say, okay, this user already logged in through another application, and the token's valid. I don't need to challenge him again. Right? So in this case, right, you can basically get the single sign-on functionality because the user just signed on once through it, and then he can access it within all the applications that's been integrated with the product. Okay, now on the deployment options, as I kind of mentioned, it's the architecture was designed to be lightweight, right? So that means the entire SSO server is just a web app that can be deployed on a J2EE container. Right? So you have various options to deploy deploy the single sign-on application. Right? So one option is to create a standalone, SSO cluster. Right? So in that case, you have dedicated machines for the single sign-on service. And, you want to set up at least a cluster with load balancers, right, to make sure there's no single point of failure. And the server itself is stateless, so, it's really, even for HA and failover, right, it's very easy to set up. You just set up a load balancer and deploy multiple instances of the application, right, on multiple nodes, right? And the load balancer would route the request to one of the instances. So that's one option, is the standalone app cluster. The other option you can also have is you can deploy on mid-tier machines. So if you have a bunch of mid-tiers already kind of set up for Remedy, right, you can just directly deploy the SSO Web App on the mid-tier machine. So the agents, right, the other, like MyIT, Smart IT, will have agents that will still talk to the SSO web apps, right? But you can deploy that, on your existing nodes that's running along with mid-tier. And on those, you have an option of deploying on the same Tomcat as the mid-tier, or you could also deploy on a separate Tomcat instance on the same node. But the SSO server is, very lightweight, so, it takes, very, additional load on those machines. SSO supports multi-tenancy. What that means is you can set up like multiple authentication providers, right? And SSO, through its configuration, you can define a mapping from web URL, either using the host name or request parameter to map to a tenant, right? So, for example, you might have tenant A dot, your domain name, right? Tenant B dot, your domain name, right? From the URL, and then you can map that to SAML IDP1 or SAML IDP2. So the mapping is defined as part of the configuration. And on the agent side, it'll basically apply that, mapping that you have defined, right, to your incoming URLs, and then determine which tenant that the user belongs to and route the request to that agent. And we support like two different modes of multi-tenancy. So one is where an agent can dispatch to different instances of the SSO Web App. In that case, like you can imagine that you can you have a shared service with an agent, but you want to talk to different SSO instances itself, right? So that's kind of the agent that's the dispatching. we also support where the SSO server does the dispatching, right? So on the server itself, you configure, multiple tenants, and then the agent routes the request to the server, and then the server determines which of the tenant it's going to talk to. So, and these are configured in the admin UI. We'll see that later when we in the demo. For another point, we try to kind of optimize on the SSO is on the performance, and one thing we do is how we handle sessions. Right? So on the SSO agents, we do an additional check to determine whether the user has already had a session and the user is already logged into that session. Right? So what that means is that if you already log in, right, you have a cookie and you have the session established and the flag says you already log in, the agent will not do additional requests to the SSO server. So this mainly reduces the load on the SSO server itself, since it only needs to be called whenever a new user has to log in, right, or he has to log out. Right? But while the application is running and you already authenticated and you visit a page, right, the agent will determine that you already log in and it's a well-established session. It doesn't make any calls to the SSO server itself. So again, that kind of reduced the load on the server, and that's why we kind of designed it to be lightweight. That the server itself doesn't have to be very powerful. For high availability, as I kind of mentioned earlier, it's the SSO service itself is stateless, so you can install multiple instances of the SSO service. All the session and the user tokens are persisted in the database. So, if one of the nodes, imagine you have like 3 nodes in the cluster, right? Users log in and it's in node A, right? But that node goes down, right? The load balancer will redirect it to another instance. That instance will know, okay, I don't have the session and the user token in memory, right? So it'll load it from the database, right? But the setup of HA is very easy. You just deploy multiple instances of the SSO service and configure the load balancer to route it to all the nodes that are alive right within the cluster. There's no need to configure sticky sessions, as again it's stateless. So it can route to any of the instances. So for persistence, all the states are persisted in the database, and it's loaded from the database. And a typical deployment, you can use the database that you have installed for Remedy, and you can deploy that. What's stored in the database is just the session information and also the configuration information, and it doesn't take, very much space on the database. It's mainly the number of active sessions, right, the number of, active users right, in the system, and then some space for the configuration information. But for a true HA architecture, right, you want the database not to be a single point of failure as well. Right? In that case, you should set up database replication. So I'll go into a little bit more detail on the features. The SSO service is implemented in the SSO Web App. It implements basic functionality to get a request from the agent. So the agent will always redirect the request to the SSO Web App. And the Web App will delegate the authentication to the correct, plugin they're installed. It generates the tokens and stores it in the database. And then there's also a HTTP-based API to verify the token. So when an agent needs to verify a token that's valid, it calls that API. And then there are login pages for AR authentication. It presents a login page. authentication protocols that are currently supported is SAML and AR. All the configurations are done in the admin UI, and we'll go into a little bit more as part of the demo. But you can use it. There's some general parameters that you configure. There's a multi-tenancy support, and then you have the configuration for the specific, authentication mechanism that you're integrating with. And then there's a session monitoring page where an admin can see who are the currently login sessions available in the system. There's an installer, and the installer basically installs both the SSO service and also integration with the various Remedy applications. For the database, right, as I mentioned, it stores the tokens that are, token information, and also the configuration data are stored in the database. So anything you change on the admin UI, it's recorded and stored in the database. For multi-tenancy, we do support the mapping that using host name and using request parameters. And each tenant can have a different configuration option for the authentication mechanism that you're integrating with. We have out-the-box integration with all the Remedy applications. So for Smart IT, My IT, we have a web agent that's deployed within those applications, and we have a SDK it uses to extract the user principal from after single sign-on has been established. We also integrate with analytics, and that's very similar to the Smart IT, My IT integration. And also have integration with obviously Remedy mid-tier, and those we deploy the agent, the SSO Authenticator, and then the area plugin for the AR applications. Installer, its additional features are, it sets up the database integration, server group options, and then per application, like integration with the various products, and also doing upgrades. The admin UI and the tenant UI will go in as part of the demo, but basically have additional configuration that's specific for each of the authentication mechanism that you have. It's one thing I point out is the user ID transformation, and that's a common one that's used because you have to map like the user ID from the external authentication provider back into a Remedy user ID. So in there we have a number of out-the-box user ID transformations that are commonly used, such as turning all the names to lowercase. Also, if you're using SAML, right, you can select which SAML attribute contains the user ID instead of the default, like the name ID that's typically used. So there are various options on how to extract the user ID from the external authentication mechanism. And those you configure as part of the admin UI. And the user ID is also pluggable, so it's possible for for customers to extend and add additional user ID transformation. And for SAML as well, we put in specific integration to do the metadata exchanges between SAML service provider and the SAML identity provider. Because in a typical SAML integration, you need to exchange metadata between the service provider and the identity provider. Right? And on our side, we have to import their identity provider information. And then on the identity provider side, we export metadata for the IDP to integrate with. So we have UI specifically to make that easier. You give it the URL of the SAML provider, it will automatically extract all the information and fill it out. But if if that provider doesn't give external URL, right, that you can extract information from, you can also type in all the information by hand. But those are going to be SAML specific depending on the IDP that you use. One other feature is what's called bypass URL. So that's a bypass mechanism. So if you set up SAML, but your administrator wants to use AR for authentication, right? There's a mechanism to configure a bypass URL so that you can always have access to remedy in case there's a networking issue that you can't talk to the SAML, or some other issues that might come up, right? So by using the bypass URL, the admin, right, can always access the remedy application and do some configuration or administration tasks, right, using the bypass URL. Okay, now we'll go to a demo. The demo will basically go through the administration, right? How do you set up? How do you use the administration UI to set up all the configuration you need to integrate with external authentication mechanism?
Hi everyone, this is Jason from SSO team. I'm going to demo SSO Admin UI. SSO Admin UI is a UI for SSO server configuration and monitoring. This is a login page for SSO Admin UI. Let me log in as the default admin user. After logging, you will see 3 top-level tabs. The first one is General, which contains some server-level configuration, such as cookie domain, max session time, server log level. SSO Server acts as a service provider when using SAML for authentication. So in Advanced tab, you will see some SAML-related configuration, like service provider entity ID, external URL, and signing certificate. This information will be used when SSO creates SAML authentication request or create SP metadata. The second top-level tab is named RAM. In SSO, the concept RAM means a set of configuration for user authentication. In RAM tab, you will see a list of existing RAMs. For this SSO server, we already create 3 different RAMs. You can add a new RAM by click Add RAM button. You can also view or edit an existing RAM by click the Edit icon. Or if you want to delete an existing RAM, you can click the Delete RAM button. Now let's take a deep look at RAM configuration. Let's edit this RAM. In General tab, you will see the RAM ID, RAM domains, and final logout URL. A RAM domain is used by SSO agent to identify which RAM is going to be used for authentication. So the SSO agent will match application URL with the domain list of each RAM to identify which RAM is going to be used. The final logout URL is used for redirection after user logout from SSO. The second tab is Authentication. Currently, we support 2 authentication types, SAML and AR. If you choose SemiAuthentication, you usually start by importing IDP metadata. Use the import button. You can import either through a URL or from a local file. I'm going to show import from a local file. Select a file and click import button. It shows the IDP metadata is imported successfully. You can change the configuration manually here for SemiAuthentication. For example, for the user ID attribute, by default, if it is not set, the name ID element value in SEMO response will be used as user ID. But if IDP returns user ID through some custom attribute in SEMO response, you can specify the name of custom attribute here so that its value will be used as user ID. After SSO extract user ID from SEMO response, you can use transformation option to map the user ID in SEMO response to the login name in AR user form. So these are the options provided out of box. In the future, we will support a plugin mechanism to allow you to dynamically add custom transformation here. You can click the View Metadata button, which will open a new browser tab to show the SP metadata for this RAM. The IDP admin can import the SP metadata at IDP site, either through this URL, or you can save the content to a local file and send the file to the IDP admin. At the bottom, it allows you to configure some templates when creating, which will be used when creating authentication requests and SP metadata. This is some advanced feature. So by default, it uses system level default templates. But if the template cannot generate the authentication, for example, the authentication request for some IDP, you can configure a custom template here by select the custom option and click edit button to edit the custom template for this specific RAM. Another supported authentication type is AR. For AR, you simply specify the AR server host and port. You can click test button to test the connection. If it fails, it will show an error message. If it's successful, it will show a successful message. One thing to note, if you choose SEMO for authentication, you have option to bypass SEMO authentication, use some special URL. In order to enable this feature, you need to select this checkbox, and then an AR tab will be displayed. It has similar configuration when you select AR for authentication type, but there are some messages at the bottom to tell you what the bypass URL format look like. So you only need to copy this URL and replace application URL portion with the application URL you want to access. The last part for a RAM configuration is about branding. Branding means you can customize the login page for AR authentication. Let me choose some custom logo and background. Okay. You can click preview button to see what it would look like for the end user. Okay. The last top level tab is named Session. In this session UI, you will see a list of users who are currently logging. You can filter the user list by user ID or RAM ID in the search box. This UI also supports pagination. If the user list contains users more than one page, when you scroll down to the bottom of the list, it will automatically load the users of next page. On the top right corner of this admin UI, if you click the admin user name, it will show a menu. You can change the password of the current admin user. You can also export the existing configuration. Now a file is downloaded automatically after I click the export button. It contains all the information of the existing configuration. So I can make some change. For example, change some basic configuration, and I can maybe delete this RAM. Now I want to restore to the previous state. I export it. I can use the import button, select the file, and import it. Now you see the configuration comes back to the state when I export it. After you have done all the things, you can click Logout menu item to log out from the admin UI. Now it goes back to the login UI. This is demo for SSO admin UI. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so that was the demo of the Remedy SSO admin UI and how to configure it. So you can see it's pretty easy to, once you have the RSSO service deployed, it's very easy to kind of configure to the external mechanisms, and we provide like all the common options that you would normally need, and we try to do it automatically. But if you need to overwrite any of those, particular features, especially with SAML, because you have various different identity providers, that you can overwrite those, with specific options that you need. But we designed it to be out the box, easy to use. So with that, I'll hand it back to Rahul to go over some FAQ on Remedy single sign-on.
Okay, thanks, Alvin. So in the next few slides, we will talk about some of the questions that customers and partners have asked about Remedy SSO. So I'm sure, as we have, I've seen a few of these questions popping up on the Q&A panel. So what are the authentications that Remedy SSO supports? So Remedy SSO, the first release, which is the 9.0SP1 is the first release for Remedy SSO. We just support SAML, the federated authentication, and Remedy AR system. Those are the ones we are supporting. Kerberos, you can use Kerberos using SAML. In fact, we have some documentation around how you can enable Kerberos using SAML. So Kerberos is supported, but it is via SAML. I'll cover how we are going in the future with additional authentications. The different set of products that we are integrated, the different BMC products integrated with Remedy SSO. So we have the mid-tier, we have analytics, MyIT, Smart IT, our new product, MyIT Service Broker Edition. All of those are planned to be integrated. They are already integrated. The Service Broker will be integrated. The other products around, I have that in the upcoming slides. In fact, I'll hold it for that. So there's another question about, Remedy SSO, like in the Atrium SSO, we use some third-party component. Is it the same case with Remedy SSO? No, this Remedy SSO is ground up that we have built. It doesn't use any existing third-party application underneath it, like the Open SSO or OpenAIM that we use for Atrium SSO. The clear advantage for Atrium SSO when it used Open SSO was some of those libraries or some of those authentications were available out of the box because OpenAIM supported those. But of course, there were challenges for customers to realize value from Atrium SSO quickly because that also brought a lot of complexity to the entire solution. So for Remedy SSO, it's a ground-up application, pretty easy for you to configure, as well as it's pretty easy for us to help you with any situation. So that's the big value of Remedy SSO. The BSM use case. So Remedy SSO in this release is primarily focused around integration of Remedy SSO with ITSM or the service support products like the mid-tier, Smart IT, My IT, Service Broker Edition, My IT Service Broker Edition. We'll have Iridium coming up soon with the integration. But some of the other products like BMC, Atrium Orchestrator, PPM, or the TrueSight, they're evaluating option to integrate with Remedy SSO, and they will have some announcement coming in the future. But as of date, as you've seen, most of the products from service support or the ITSM are already integrated with Remedy SSO. Traditional authentication, currently we are just focused on the federated authentication and along with the AR. But as the product will evolve, we plan to add additional authentication to Remedy SSO. So while we talk about Remedy SSO through the session, I'm sure there will be a question about what happens to Atrium SSO, what are our plans with Atrium SSO. So there is no change in the status of the Atrium SSO. We will continue to provide any kind of patches, hotfixes if there is any issues. But at the same time, Remedy SSO is going to be our strategic direction, which also means that we are not going to have any new integration or product feature planned to be added to Atrium SSO. Most of the focus for us is going to be on Remedy SSO, adding up the new integration within different BMC products and try to add more authentications to Remedy SSO. Also, the previous slide kind of heads into this slide, which is, do you need to migrate from Atrium SSO to Remedy SSO? May not be the case if you already have Atrium SSO working without any issues. If your initial configuration, everything is set up, you can continue to use it. But if there is an opportunity for you, when you're upgrading, let's say Remedy, you have this option of using Remedy SSO, which is easy to configure and maintain. And this is a one-time move from Atrium SSO to Remedy SSO. So just to quote an example from our own experience in Remedy On Demand, we have already started customers using Remedy SSO for authentication, sample-based authentication of our Remedy On Demand customers, and that move took a couple of hours for moving from Atrium SSO to Remedy SSO. So that will give you an idea of what kind of effort you need to move from one technology to Remedy SSO. Given that you have multiple solutions, and particularly if you're a partner, then you'll have this challenge as to select which technology to be selected. You have two technologies offering the same output, Remedy SSO and Atrium SSO. So where Remedy SSO shines is if you are looking at SAML authentication. If you are focused on the Remedy products, which that's the set of products currently integrated with Remedy SSO, or if you are using the Remedy releases 8.1 and 9x, then you have the installers available working with Remedy SSO installer working with these versions of Remedy product or the AR versions. So that's where Remedy SSO fits the best, and you can propose Remedy SSO as your solution. If it is anything beyond this, which is if you have additional authentication which is not SAML, then probably your choice will be Atrium SSO. Or if you're looking at broader use case outside of the service support product or Remedy, Mid-tier, Smart IT, My IT, if you're looking at those products, then probably Atrium SSO will be your choice. As I said, Remedy SSO was released in August along with the Remedy 9.0 SP1 release. If you go to EPD, Electronic Product Download site of BMC support, then you'll see that for Remedy AR server, underneath that Remedy 9.0 SP1 release, you'll see an option for Remedy SSO libraries. So this is where you will download your Remedy SSO application and then install it as we have talked through the demo here. That kind of covered some of the top of the mind questions, and before we move to Q&A, I'm going to take a quick minute to summarize today's presentation. So Remedy SSO offers the similar single sign-on solution that we have offered in the past as well, but where Remedy SSO differentiates itself is the simplicity. While outcome is same, the focus of the product is bringing in the simplicity for setting up the SSO. And to give an example, right in the first release of the product, we have taken care of the issues which bothered many customers and partners in the past, like setting up the integration and setting up the SSO and then integrating it with mid-tier or AR. In the past, it was all manual process. But Remedy SSO first release, we have this integration available as part of the install process itself, and so it kind of saves you from any possibility of misconfiguration or manual configuration that could result into errors. Also, strategically, Remedy SSO is the direction that BMC would pursue in the future when it comes to the SSO solution of choice. So you can expect more product integration, product integration with different BMC products, as well as additional authentication getting added to the list of Remedy SSO in the future. With that, we will open the forum for Q&A. We have seen quite a few questions in the chat panel, and we'll start answering a few of those from this forum as well.
Thank you, Rahul. I have a few questions for you and Alvin. First question is, will this Remedy SSO work with existing AR ITSM versions like 7.6 or 8.1?
Yeah, so I'll take that question. So currently the version that we have out is Remedy SSO 9.0 SP1. That is already tested and it works, the installer works with the Remedy 9 version as well as Remedy 8.1 SP2 version. For 7.604 integration with 7.604, there are manual steps. We haven't done the full testing for Remedy SSO version with the AR 7.604, but other versions are already compatible with Remedy SSO.
Great. Next question is, will Remedy SSO additional authentications like LDAP or CAC PIV cards in the upcoming Remedy SSO releases?
Yeah. So, as I said, Remedy SSO is going to be our strategic direction when it comes to SSO. In fact, we are already running a beta program as we speak. We are running a 9.1 release program where we are exposing the LDAP capability to our customers and partners, and they are testing it. So LDAP is coming sooner. You would see that in a couple of weeks from now, within the 9.1 release. Additional authentications like CAC and PIV or the smart cards, that's on the roadmap, but I don't have any specific timeline, but they are definitely going to get added to Remedy SSO feature list.
And a follow-on question to that is plugins to support Facebook or Twitter type authentications?
So I think I'll take that a little. So those applications typically implement OAuth, which is another delegated authentication mechanism that similar to SAML, but for web-based applications. I think, Rahul, that's something that we'll look at as part of the roadmap that's not currently supported.
Yeah, that's right.
Next question is, what database types can you use with the SSO Web App?
Okay, I'll take that. So out the box, we have, tested with Microsoft SQL Server and Oracle. And also, I think we've done some testing with DB2. So those are the ones that are supported out the box.
Great, thank you. Another question is regarding ADDM support, future plans for ADDM support and BNA.
Yeah, so I'll take that one. ADDM, we are actively talking to ADDM team. So we don't have any specific timelines at this moment, but that integration between Remedy SSO and ADDM is being actively pursued. BNA, the BMC Atrium Orchestrator, the TrueSight, some of these products are still in the evaluation phase as how they can integrate with Remedy SSO. So that will happen eventually, but at this point of time, we don't have any specific timelines as when that convergence will happen.
Okay, it looks like there are no further questions that we see. We would like to thank you for your participation in this month's Connect with Remedy webinar, and would like to thank Rahul and Alvin for taking us through this content. Thank you.
Now and forever, we bring IT to life.